Hello there. Today we're looking at an incredible story about a young man's first serious encounter with the law. But as dramatic as that experience was, the biggest lesson was still waiting for him when he finally made it home. Imagine hearing that from your own mother. It wasn't just a warning, it felt like a promise. And with those words, the stage was set for one of the most unforgettable weeks of his life. His mother believed that strict discipline was a way of protecting him. She wanted him to learn tough lessons at home because she knew the outside world would not always be forgiving. In her mind, her discipline was an act of love. She believed the people and influences around him could pull him away from the future she wanted for him. She saw so much potential in her son and worried that life on the streets would keep him from reaching it. It all started with what seemed like a simple opportunity. The narrator spotted a newspaper ad for cheap cell phones and came up with a business idea: buy them at a low price, sell them for more, and make some quick money. To get to the suburbs, he borrowed an old car from his stepfather, who was a mechanic. But this time, the car had mismatched license plates. It seemed like a small mistake, but it was enough to catch the attention of the police and lead to flashing lights in his rearview mirror. As the police pulled him over, he wasn't most afraid of getting arrested. What worried him most was what his parents would say when they found out. To him, their disappointment and punishment felt even more serious than the consequences of breaking the law. The officer told him he could make one phone call. Instead of calling home, he made a surprising choice. He believed facing a night in jail would be easier than facing his parents' disappointment, so he decided not to call them at all. Now he was in a holding cell, and everything had changed. He was no longer just a teenager who had made a mistake. He had to quickly learn how to adjust to an unfamiliar and intimidating environment. Before long, he noticed an unspoken rule in the cell. Everyone was trying to look tougher than they really felt. Realizing that fear was driving everyone's behavior, he decided to act confident too. He leaned into the image that others already assumed about him, hoping it would discourage anyone from bothering him. Then the guards brought in another prisoner. He was a huge man with an intimidating presence, and the mood in the cell changed instantly. Suddenly, no one was pretending anymore. Even the narrator felt genuinely afraid. Then something unexpected happened. A police officer tried to speak to the new prisoner, but they couldn't understand each other because they spoke different languages. The narrator realized he spoke the prisoner's language, Sangha, and stepped in to translate. In that moment, language broke through the tension and turned fear into understanding. As the narrator talked with him, he realized the man wasn't who he had imagined. He was struggling to support his family and had stolen video games without even realizing they were useless without the game console. In that moment, the narrator learned another important lesson. The people who seem the toughest on the outside are often carrying the hardest burdens. The man wasn't a mastermind. He was someone who had been left behind by circumstances. After spending a week in the local jail, he was taken in handcuffs to the main courthouse. The holding cell there felt completely different. It was louder, more intimidating, and filled with people facing much more serious charges. For the first time, he realized he was surrounded by individuals with far more experience in the criminal justice system. The moment he entered the holding cell, he realized the rules were completely different. The atmosphere was tense, and he felt intense pressure to quickly figure out where he belonged and how to stay safe. In that moment, every decision suddenly felt important. The room was divided into separate groups, and he immediately realized he had to decide where to stand. He felt caught between different parts of his identity, unsure of where he would be accepted or how others would see him. In that tense moment, he knew his choice could affect his safety. In that moment, his decision wasn't about who he was, it was about where he would be safest. He chose to stand with the small group that seemed least likely to threaten him. It wasn't a choice based on identity, but on trying to get through a frightening situation without getting hurt. After a week in jail and a frightening experience in the courthouse holding cell, the courtroom hearing was surprisingly brief. His lawyer had arranged everything in advance, bail was granted, and within minutes he was walking back outside as a free man. Walking out of jail didn't mean his ordeal was over. The hardest part was still ahead of him. The person he feared disappointing most was waiting at home, and he knew the conversation with his mother would be far more difficult than anything he had faced in court. He walked through the front door with a story prepared, planning to say he had been staying with his cousin. But the moment he saw his mother's face, he knew the lie wouldn't work. She wasn't angry, she was deeply disappointed, and that hurt far more than any punishment he expected. Then came the biggest surprise of all. He thought he had handled everything himself, finding a lawyer and arranging bail through a friend, but his mother calmly revealed that she had known about it from the beginning. She had provided the money and made sure he got home safely. In that moment, he realized that even when he believed he was on his own, his mother had been protecting him all along. Finally, his mother explained why she had always been so strict. Every punishment and every tough lesson came from her desire to prepare him for a world she believed would not always treat him fairly or kindly. She wasn't trying to be cruel. She was trying to protect him and give him the strength to face life's challenges. Looking back, he realized his mother's toughest lessons had always come from love. She believed that letting him face the consequences of his choices would prepare him for a world that would not always be forgiving. It was a painful lesson about responsibility, identity, and a mother's determination to protect her son. And it leaves us with one final question. When does a difficult lesson become worth the cost? Thank you for joining us today, and we will continue with the last chapter in the next episode. See you!
If you'd like more personalized feedback, writing support, and discussion sessions, they're available with me or with our selected tutors. All the details are here.